James McPherson.
In the winter and spring of 1863, the Northern cause was at a kind of a low ebb. In the Eastern Theater, Union forces had been humiliated at Fredericksburg, and then an effort by General Burnside, commander of the Army of the Potomac, to retrieve his loss at Fredericksburg bogged down in what became known as the Mud March in January 1863, and Burnside was relieved of command, and General Joe Hooker took over. Hooker did a lot of boasting about what he was going to do to Robert E. Lee in the spring of 1863, and then Hooker got humiliated, and again Northern forces were beaten at Chancellorsville. In the meantime, the initial efforts of Union arms in the Western Theater to capture Vicksburg, which was the main strategic objective in that theater, had bogged down in what looked like futility. In December 1862, Sherman, commanding part of Grant's army, had assaulted Confederate defenders north of Vicksburg at Chickasaw Bluffs and had been repulsed. Cavalry raids in Grant's rear had forced him to retreat from northern Mississippi. Grant had come down to base his campaign against Vicksburg on the river, but through the early months of 1863, January, February, March, into April, it looked like nothing was happening. Disease was taking a huge toll on Union forces there. There was a lot of pressure on Lincoln to dismiss Grant as a drunk and a failure. The Northern war effort was at a low ebb in the spring of 1863. And after the Confederates' victory at Chancellorsville, Lee decided to invade the North and got Jefferson Davis's approval with several objectives in mind. One was to supply his army off the rich northern countryside, but more important, Lee was convinced that if he could win one more victory, it would so undermine the will of the northern people to continue the war and so strengthen the Peace Democrats, the Copperheads, that the Lincoln administration would be forced to give in to the demand for an armistice and peace negotiations, which would be tantamount to a Confederate victory because it would involve recognizing Confederate independence and concluding peace. So when Lee did invade the North in June 1863, the Confederacy was on a roll. It looked like they had successfully frustrated Grant in Mississippi. They had neutralized another principal Union army in Middle Tennessee. There had been a stalemate in that theater for the past 6 months as well. So Lee invaded the North hoping to win a knockout blow.